to the Concert Queen Connect. I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest here today. He has a current Texas residency. He's been playing locally here at Antone's, but he's no stranger to the scene. He's been all over the world, played some of the largest music festivals. Mr. Jonathan Tyler. Say hello.
Hello. Hey, everyone.
So you are now playing shows. I got to see your most recent show at Antone's. What does that feel like now to get back on stage?
It's been a crazy year. I mean, everybody knows it's no mystery that it is a really strange year to be a musician. I try to stay busy throughout the year, so I kept kind of doing. I do a lot of studio work, so I was trying to stay busy, working, making videos. I would play a little bit, sort of like with my friends at like Samstown Point when it was closed down. We would just kind of go play anyways, but it was closed to the public, but we would just kind of go and jam during the week. Like, so I kind of kept playing, obviously not in front of any crowds or anything like that, but there was, an opportunity to play. But yeah, I mean, getting back and being able to kind of watch people in the crowd and stuff, like it's been really like uplifting, and it's been pretty exciting just to see people kind of their reaction as they're kind of going back out and seeing a show again.
Yeah, because I'm sure you were the first show for a lot of people that are coming back, and
maybe so.
Having the whole like socially distanced. I know at Antone's it's a 20% capacity, but everything with the tables and being spaced out. How is that energy too as a performer? Because it's different. Normally you're probably used to having people in these large crowds to going from now, smaller capacity, but just as impactful to these people.
Yeah, I think, for me, like I'm such a like shoot from the hip kind of a cowboy, just like, let's just go, and sometimes I'm drinking or I'm, smoking or something. And I just I think after a long time, years of just playing all the time, you just get in such a routine, and there's such like your mind is used to doing something. So it's like
a muscle memory.
Yeah. Like turning off this whole time, like turning off for a year, it's like coming back to these shows. I've been way more aware of like just trying to be more present and like really delivering the songs like in a really tight, just, I don't know how to put it. Like I haven't been as like, just like willy-nilly with the shows. I mean, they've kind of gotten turned up a little bit. I can't lie, but I guess it just kind of is like one of those things where you're like, I really want to make sure this is a great show because we haven't done it in a long time. So it's kind of like, want to make sure it's really good. So there's been that sort of a just kind of coming back to it with like a new perspective. But at the same time, it's just kind of hopefully lose yourself a little bit while you're performing and just kind of get into the music. And like, I think that's what I'm always seeking out, when I'm playing, is like trying to kind of forget I'm supposed to do this or I'm supposed to do that and kind of be more in the flow.
Yeah.
So
well, let's take it back. So even today, like as you're performing as Jonathan Tyler, previously in a previous life, you were Jonathan Tyler in Northern Lights.
Yeah.
So tell us, I guess you started back kind of in Dallas and touring that circuit under that name, and then just kind of take us through that journey.
Well, I, went to high school in like North Dallas, and I did a bunch of like high school church bands and stuff. It was just kind of like the kids at church. That's how I kind of got started playing with people, weirdly enough. And as I was kind of playing around Dallas, like 16, 17-year-old, like that was kind of my thing. And we had some like record labels and stuff like come out and see us. I remember at the Curtain Club in Dallas. That would have been like 17 years ago or something like that. But essentially they were like, no, you're not ready. They passed on our band. We were super bummed out. And so I remember at the time being like, I'm going to go to college. So I went to North Texas University and was doing some music stuff. And also just kind of like thinking about, well, what am I going to do? Cause I just didn't know, like I was kind of half business savvy because of like my dad being a business guy, and then like half just being like, I want to do music. I hate like the business world. So I started writing my own songs at that point, and they were at that point I was like 21, and I had kind of gotten out of that whole high school church world and gotten into more of like the Dallas like music scene. And so I kind of just started writing songs and people really reacted to it. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to put together a record. And so I put together my first record as Jonathan Tyler. And I was like, well, I want to represent this like as a band thing. So it doesn't so that's when the Northern Lights name came up. And the album, I think we did it in like 5 days.
Oh, wow.
We really were totally inexperienced and just kind of like just shooting from the hip. Like I said, we were just like, let's just do it. And it really got kind of accepted in the like Red Dirt, Texas scene. Like a lot of the like guys like the Cross Canadian Ragweeds and the Stony LaRue and Randy Rogers of the world down here, they were like, loved it. And they kind of brought me into their scene. And so I started, I was immediately like playing in front of bigger crowds and stuff. So it just was kind of this fast thing that happened.
Wow.
Off of just this sort of like, let's just make an album. So that's how it kind of started. And the Northern Lights, it really was a thing, but it became a bigger thing because we signed a record deal to Atlantic. And so it was way more formal at that point. And all that to say, and we could condense this or, however.
Oh, you're good.
But essentially what happened is we toured on that. We put out our album and we did okay. Like for the time, it was really cool. It was fun. We got to go out and play with all these great bands and big crowds. But it's just some weird stuff happened. And some people who follow me may know, but this guy comes out of the woodwork. He's like a patent lawyer, and he basically patented the Northern Lights name and then kind of came at us and like with a lawsuit. And so we ended up having to strike this lawsuit with this guy, strike a deal with this random guy.
Wow.
And it was really bad. It was like, pay us $3,000 a month. And at the end of like this 7-year period, you have to pay us like $50,000.
What?
And so I don't know who was like my legal counsel, but we did it. We like signed it. We're like, okay. So it was a thing where we just paid it for a few years. And then weirdly enough, like when the band was we'd already kind of gone through all these issues with Atlantic and it was kind of falling apart. And so at that point, the name, it stunk to like let it go. But I just kind of was like, I've got to let it go. I'm not going to pay this guy $50,000 or whatever he wants.
That's insane.
The band was kind of falling apart because the label had kind of held us in our contract for a few years without letting us release any music. So we were just kind of like in this gridlock at that point. And so everybody kind of started getting different jobs and doing things. And it just kind of fell apart a little bit.
Wow.
All the while I was still playing shows, especially around Texas and stuff, and just kind of keeping my, not momentum going, but just kind of paying bills by playing. Like it was just really like a just straight up like job, but a great job, but like, but that's how I was doing it. So that's kind of how that went, the Northern Lights, kind of what happened. Strangely enough, just like on the end of just to kind of bookend that whole story, I was playing a gig in Dallas and this guy comes up to me afterwards and he's like, hey, I read the story about how you lost your Northern Lights name and I'm going to help you get it back. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, I'm a lawyer and I'm a music fan and I love your stuff and I want to help you. And I was just kind of like, yeah, sure, buddy. Like, I meet people all the time at shows, and they're like, I'm gonna get you a gig at the.
Yeah, Steve and I talk about that. People have all these pipe dreams sometimes, so you got to take it with a grain of salt.
Especially at the end of gigs when they had like 4 or 5 beers, and they're like, I'm gonna get you on the Rogan podcast. You're like, all right, yeah, sure. I'm gonna get your name back for you, and I kind of blew him off, but like a week later, he was like, okay, so I've served him. I've done this. And he's like, he came back and, told me all this stuff that he'd done. And I was like, what's your name?
Excuse me. I didn't quite catch you. You served who now? What happened?
So his name's Tim Minshew. He's an attorney in Dallas, and we become really, really good friends.
That's a good guy to have in your corner.
I know. I mean, well, on top of just having him in my corner, I mean, he's become like one of my best friends, actually. It's really crazy, but he writes music too, and is a huge music fan, and started doing like a radio program on Kanon in Dallas, which is a nonprofit, but it's a big station in Dallas. And he started DJing on that. So he's just a huge music fan and a really good heart and a good person. And like, we just sort of, through that, he got the name back because the guy up in Minnesota or whatever didn't want to come to Texas to fight it. I mean, basically what it came down to was like, do you want to pay a lawyer to fight for the name? And at the time, like, I guess when I was, at first faced with this adversity, I just kind of assumed like, oh, it's going to be too much to deal with. So let it go. Mm-hmm. When really in reality, all it took was like one really serious lawyer kind of going at this guy.
Wow.
And flexing like hard on a guy, like, hope you're ready to fight for 2 years or whatever.
I just picture this street fight. You have these two attorneys like coming back. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what's that Grease movie? It's not Grease. It's the one before that. Like
but they have just kind of like the street gangs.
Yeah. Anyways, but he got it back for us. And so now I have the name back. But at this point, it's just, it's been so many years estranged that it's really hard to kind of pull it back together. And, I don't know that anybody really wants to. Like, I think that there's probably some fans out there that would love to hear that first album. I know there are, because there's always people you need to be more rock, like your first album. You need to be, like, what happened to all the rock? It's like, well, I don't know. Just kind of, things change, people change. I'm still chasing the inspiration and trying to, find things that make me want to keep writing and playing.
Yeah,
because it's all about, like, I think doing it for the love and like wanting to do it can be hard. Like, especially when you get into like the record deals where there's conflict and there's people that are kind of telling you what you can and can't do, and there's, not all situations are like that, but my situation was kind of like that. So it's like, in those things, you're like, well, what's going to give me the will, the energy to like fight and to kind of keep trying and to keep writing and stuff. And a lot of times it just has to be like inspiration and intuition. And you can't say like, that stylistically you can only be one thing. It's like, I think you kind of have to be open-minded to like just letting music or art take you wherever it's going to go.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I'm here now as like a solo artist. It's easier to be limber and just to kind of like jump around and do different things without having like a set band that's like always has to be a part of everything.
Right. Well, and that sounds like with, like you said, the Northern Lights, there's a certain sound that is attached to that name as well. So then making the transition over as a solo artist, it just seems like night and day. Like
it is for sure. Yeah.
So with that happened with Atlantic Records, and just for people that are maybe locked into something like that, or they're feeling, you obviously made the shift away. Like, what was that like? And what were some of the advice that you could give?
It was really hard. Like, I think like the biggest thing is like, I signed the deal.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like,
you see that all the time where artists sign things because it's a big name. Like when you see something like that.
It is. And like a lot of times you don't have any leverage when you're brand new artist or a brand new business. It's like, you don't really have any leverage, and somebody with all the capital or like a label that has, that just helps finance everything. It's like, well, they have all the leverage. So a lot of times those early deals are just not in your favor. And that's fine. It's like, there's a trade-off. I don't knock anybody who does that, or I don't really have anything against like labels or anything at all. I think, it's just about like having good people around that can give you good advice and good counsel about what you're signing and what you're getting into. I mean, it's kind of obvious. And I think at 22, 23, when I signed that stuff, like I just was really young, really just partying like crazy and just kind of didn't care.
Yeah.
But then like, a few years later, it all sort of was very obvious that I needed to pay attention and needed to care and be like more in tune with what that stuff was. So, I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, I know a lot of people on major label deals and big deals like that are really happy.
Yeah.
And it really has to do with just getting good people on your side to give you advice and stuff. Like it really comes down to that. Like, I think that's, I don't know if I could say anything to like a younger artist or something, it's just to have smart people who've been through it before that you can talk to and just before you make decisions.
Yeah. It's sound advice. Very sound advice.
Be. I mean, or the thing is that I always make a joke that you kind of have to be like that, like God made us stupid on purpose and that we have to be stupid sometimes to like make it through the struggle to get like, cause I think about it. I'm like, I'm going to quit business school. Screw you, Dad. Like I'm quitting business school. I'm going to be a rock and roll guy and I'm going to be fine. He's like, you're going to be broke. And it's like, I don't need money. And, like looking back, like on the whole thing, it's like, yeah, that was pretty dumb. Like it's really difficult. And the odds of like cutting through everything, it's really hard to do. Like with any business, like these days, I mean, it's really hard. And so I think at the beginning, you kind of have to have this sort of like, not that I say stupid and that's like that's kind of mean, but it's like you kind of have to have this sort of like just unawareness of how difficult it actually is, because those first few years are just like you're just getting your ass kicked, like running around in a van, sleeping like 5 people to a hotel room, like everybody's sharing beds and like you're just like trying to save money wherever you can, because there's you're taking 5 people on the road and they're going, we'll give you $250. You're like, what does that equal out to for every one of us? Like, not very much. And I think that like, that's just how it is at first. And so, you kind of have to have that sort of knuckleheadedness in the beginning to just sort of like power through that hard initial period. And then once you kind of break through that hard initial period, it gets a little easier. And by then you're usually a little smarter. So it's like, I think that you have to kind of just follow your gut, honestly, and follow your heart, as cheesy as that sounds. But I think that we all have these intuitive feelings, and we have these sort of, there's things that pull us into different directions. And I think a lot of times there's a reason. And so like, you kind of have to go forward without fear. And that's kind of dumb when you really look at it from the outside, because it's like, there's no way you're going to make it, but maybe you will, if you could just push through hard enough. So,
well, your passion and everything comes through, because like you said, without that passion, without that love of the music and what you're doing, that's, I feel like with everything, but even more so, like you said, in music, because the odds are not necessarily in everybody's favor to do that.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, like any business, I mean, like these guys who go out to San Francisco to do startups and stuff. And you're like, you hear about like, oh yeah, we all piled into a garage and we just built like, like Apple Macintosh out of this garage. And it's like, it really starts with like a true love of something like you're really obsessed with, and you just kind of go for it. I think that a lot of times when you start that journey, you don't even really know what you're getting into, or and it can morph. Like the craziest thing these days is like, and I talk like I'm so older, like I've been through so much, but like in my early days, like I would kind of like joke about, like I would just make jokes like, for instance, like I would be like, I really want to do Conan. Like I want to play Conan so bad. And like, I never played it under Jonathan Tyler or Jonathan Tyler and the Northern Lights, but I played guitar for someone who was playing it. So I ended up playing it, but it wasn't exactly how I thought I was going to be playing it, but it still happened. It's kind of like, sometimes you think like, you know, for instance, I'd be like, I want to have a song that reaches the whole world. Like I want to, just as a goal, like, and I still have that, like the idea that you would write something that everyone could hear or would hear and people know your melody. It's kind of like just like a goal, like playing at the White House or something. But I did that through Jack Daniels, you know, like I made a commercial for those guys and it was like on the Super Bowl. It was everywhere, you know, and it was like, I still see it. And people hit me up all the time. Like, I saw your commercial. And it's like, well, this is getting out there. It's just not exactly how I thought it would be. So there's always these, I think that life gives you these twists where you're like, you may have a dream and think like, oh, I'm going to do it this way. And then it ends up being done, but just a different way than you thought it was.
Yeah.
And I think that can happen a lot of times. So having an open mind about like what you're supposed to do and what you're going to do is also really key, because you can be flexible and things, doors open that, you know, aren't always what you think they're going to be.
Right. Well, it sounds like you have the awareness too, because a lot of people, like you said, may not know, like you're achieving that dream and that goal in some way, whereas other people are still rigid and like, no, I have to do this. But how is that? So when you've checked off some of those boxes, were you like, okay, I'm good on that? Or you're like, oh, I still want to keep chasing after that?
Well, I think that it's kind of like, it's really cool, but it's also like, oh, I feel the same, you know, like it's always like that. I mean, it's like it's the age old thing where you're like, I want to make this much money. And then you do, and you're like, oh, but I need like twice that now. you know, like that's kind of the thing. It's like, there's always going to be more to try to like Napoleon style conquer. But, it really does always come back to just like the love of it. And just, I think that's the thing. It's like, even for those Apple Macintosh nerds that started in their garage, you know, like they started with this goal and then it sort of, they built it. And then it was probably like, wow, I can't believe that it's this far along. And then at a certain point it was like, well, let's make an iPhone, you know, and it just keeps going. And I think at a certain point you're just in such an unknown place of sort of like just life where your dream has kind of led you to this place where like you've almost surpassed that dream, and now you're just kind of left with like, okay, well, what do we do now? And that's where you can always kind of come back to just the love of like, well, I love doing this, so I'm going to wake up and work on these songs or work on somebody else's songs or whatever it is. I mean, I think that it really does apply to like all different kinds of people and what they do, you know, just it's like, what makes you want to do something? There's got to be this sort of thing there that pushes you. Otherwise, when things get hard, you're not going to be able to like keep doing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it sounds like you've taken that path though. Like you said, it started off as one thing and then it's changed and shifted, but your love of the music is still the same. So how is your sound from before? Would you say, and I know your most recent album, would you say that's probably the most true to who you are as an artist?
Well, I think I'm getting like better at being able to like recognize whenever things are happening in the creative process that are like, maybe like when you're writing or something and there's always choices to be made. It's like, do we make it like this? Or do we go like this? You know, and I think that now I've gotten to a place where I can recognize when things are, I know how to kind of like stay true to what I feel sort of like drawn to, like, cause I mean, there's no real way to explain like inspiration and then just how it starts flowing. Like when you get an idea, you start building on that idea. Like it's like a building block. And then you try to get more, build it up to where you have a complete idea. And so that whole process, it's like, it can easily get swayed by, well, what if I want like a radio hit, you know? And then you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna change this song. I want to make this, I want this to be able to be played on this sort of thing, or we want these guys to like it. Some of those things can really influence artists. And I know I've sort of gone down those paths before where I'm like, you just get influenced by what you think needs to happen. And sometimes, you know, trying to stay true. So it's like, I think that the first album was like really learning like what it was like to just go into a studio, get the band together, play, record. It's like, okay, that we did that. Then the next one, you're like, I want to make these things better. And so you slowly get better after you've done it, 4 or 5 times. It becomes like, I always tell artists that I'm working with when they come in, especially the new ones, I'm like, this isn't the Super Bowl. Like, it's all right. If we don't make it perfect the first time, like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, it can be a process of like getting, working it. We nudge it here, we nudge it there. And then by the time we're done, it'll be great. But just like give it time and like be easy. But,
and you're speaking from like a production standpoint, right? So like you're helping other artists. So you obviously have your own songs and doing your own thing, but then I know you've worked with all different types of people. Like, how does that production process, like you said, they're coming in, they're new, and you're now incorporating that piece?
Well, a lot of people, when they go into recording, for one, they're going to be spending a lot of money to do it. So they're essentially like, they've worked really hard, they've saved up, or somebody else is paying for it. But it's a big deal because you're like, everything really like rests upon this thing. Like, we have to do good. So they come in with so much pressure on themselves to just be amazing. And a lot of times, like, that doesn't really create like a great album. Like, that pressure is actually kind of influences you in a bad way, I think. And I think people make better art when they're a little bit like more chill and just like, let's take our time. We can spend long time if we need to get this done. Like, that's my process. At the same time, I think it's cool when people like, there's times where like pressure creates really cool things too. But I don't really like to work like that in the studio. So I usually will like kind of tell people right on, like, look, like, chill. Let's not get too worried about this. It's not the end of the world. Like, if we make a track, it's not great, we'll start over. Like, it's okay. Because I think that it makes it easier to relax and be like, okay, let me really think about this. Let me really feel it, instead of being like, oh, I only have like a day, I have to do it right now.
Right.
Which kind of sometimes you just kind of make bad decisions in those state of minds.
So do you have a particular process that you follow, or is it kind of different with each artist?
It is different with everybody. I mean, it depends on like if they have finished material, if the band's already been playing it, or like say they've been playing a song for a year, they might be ready to just come in and record it right then, like that, and then there's other people that I'll start at the very beginning with, like we'll actually like write the song together and then create it and build it from the very beginning. Like, and that can be really cool too. It really just depends on where an artist is at with their song and like what they how they want to see it, finished out, or if we're like actually creating a new thing that hasn't been done before, which can be really exciting too, because it can just kind of lead into something that you never saw happening. So.
Yeah. And so are you taking pieces of those things too and kind of incorporating them back? Because it's like, I'm sure you're seeing, and that's probably part of the fun as well for you, like working with these different artists, but then also when you go back to your own craft, you have these little nuggets of things and things that you can incorporate.
Yeah. It's tricky because like you can't really see yourself the way someone else can see you. And so like for an artist, like if I'm helping somebody out, I can kind of see where they're at in their life and in their journey. And I can be like, you kind of need a song like this, or it's like, this is the kind of thing that would help round out your brand or your band or your sound. So like for me, I try not to overanalyze myself like that, but I mean, obviously can't help but do it a little bit. So it helps me to actually bring in another producer when I'm working on my stuff. And I usually work with this guy out in California, Rob Schnaff. He's done so many great records, like Grammy winning, huge records. Wow. He's been doing it for a while. And I just love his sound and his process. So when I work on my stuff, a lot of times I will actually go to his studio.
Wow.
Because it kind of like lets me like not overanalyze myself, use him as a sounding board to kind of do what I do for other people, which is just kind of give them that perspective of like,
yeah,
because you'll be worried about some detail that somebody else is like, dude, nobody cares.
Yeah. Like what's an example of that?
Just like, worrying about like a lyric, like obsessing about a line, and then somebody be like, it doesn't matter at all. Use, like, or, because a lot of times you take something way too seriously, or you just like care way too much about something that no one else cares about. Like, I mean, it's really easy to do that. I think when you're like an overanalyzing person, when you're like, so should it be this speed or that speed? And you're like, can't make any decisions because you can't decide, like, is it this speed or that speed? And somebody else is like, it's that speed. It helps to kind of keep the process rolling to have other people. But the other thing is you have to have somebody you really trust, because if it's somebody you don't really care about their opinion, you're just like, nobody cares what you think. So you got to have somebody that you actually will like listen to. If they tell you like, I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like asking somebody who has like terrible style. Like, hey, what is this? Hey, do you like this? And like, actually, I don't care what you think.
Right. That's like, I see trainers that are overweight trying to give me advice. I'm like, not sure if I'd take advice from you, but thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like kind of about, you got to be careful about who you pick as like the person that you're getting your advice from in life. Like, you don't want to be taking advice from like the sad, depressed. Like, it's like trying to find the people that, you actually want to like be like, or at least that you think that they have like, I don't know.
Well, and everybody has an opinion these days, which I'm sure you say, like, and kind of seeing through all that noise, and everyone, that's one of the things I think I learned, if anything, during quarantine, was like, it doesn't matter if whatever I say or do, it's like everyone's going to have something to say about it. Everyone's going to have an opinion about it. So it's like,
there was a while there, it was like really, really bad. I mean, like I'm always like, I'm such a middle of the road kind of like political guy. Like I actually am, and I say it, I'm a centrist. Like I vote Republican and I voted Democrat. Like I voted on both sides of the thing. And a lot of times I'm like, well, I agree with these guys on this and I agree with these guys on this. And it's been so tricky the last like year to just like I've had to just like not really talk about it much like on social media, because it's just like, I don't know. It's just been so intense that people are like jumping on my page being like, well, you didn't say it the right way, or this, I'm like, well, I'm just going to delete that, because I don't really want to, to me, I'm not really like doing music to separate people and to like divide people up into like, you're right, I'm wrong. Or I'm really like, what I love more about it is going up on stage and playing and looking out and seeing like all different types of people, and nobody's looking around at each other, going like, oh, you're Republican, or you're a Democrat, or you're gay, or you're straight, or you're atheist, or you're, whatever. It's just like, we're all watching a show together, and you're more in this sort of unity through just enjoying music. And to me, that's like what I'm doing this for. Yeah. And so it's been tricky this last year, because people have been like, I've seen people just get annihilated.
So like polarizing.
People gang up on there and just like, like, you're a racist. Oh man.
I can totally relate to that. It has not, that whole 2020, and I felt like even the first month or two, and we were even supposed to have our original like show during Snowpocalypse.
Yeah.
And when that whole thing was happening. So I was like, we need to just catch a break.
Yeah.
During this whole time. But like you said, coming out on the other side of it, and just being who you are and going to your show and actually seeing that and witnessing that. I mean, you connect to the audience and you're talking to them, and you really do. I want to say like more so than some other, like every artist I see, everyone has their own way. But like with you, you're genuinely just in between songs, like having a conversation, talking to them, and in a place, like you said, in a time when that's what people are craving so much, is that connection.
Yeah, because I think that there's like definitely the loudest voices in the room are always like on, you know, one side or the other, like yelling it back and forth to each other. And I know that there's a ton of people out there who think like I do and that are kind of like, I'm just going to be chill right now and like let all these freaks like yell at each other and like, and polarize everything. But like, it's interesting because I've thought a lot about it, like when to say something, when to just kind of, when to not. And it's hard to know exactly, but I feel like, especially at a show, just being like in a moment like this, where you can actually express more than just like a 140 character tweet.
Totally.
Like you could actually express like an idea in a way that could be heard, hopefully before people just start shooting you down or anything. But it's like, I think there's a ton of people out there who think the same way, that are like, you know, I pull from this and I pull from that. And like, I'm kind of in the middle on this whole thing. Like, I think QAnon's crazy. I think, I do. I mean, I think QAnon's crazy. I think all the Proud Boys stuff is crazy. I think all the Antifa stuff is crazy. I mean, I just wish that like the sides would actually kind of call out their extremists. Like, because both sides have extremists.
Totally.
So just be like, you know, on this side, call out your extremists, and on this side, you call out your extremists, and we'll, because I think there's way more people in the middle than we realize. Like there's, and I know, because I see it at my shows where I'm like, and you look out at festivals and stuff, and nobody's like looking around at each other and like pointing the finger about, well, this guy's this and this guy's that. It's really only happens when whoever's like in charge, like the news guys or the people in charge go, we're having a problem right now. Like, okay, everyone, let me stop this concert. Like, I see there's some black people in here and there's some white people in here and there's some this in here. There's yellow people all of a sudden like, oh, there are. They weren't even aware of it.
Exactly. Until you addressed it and you pointed it out. Yeah.
You know, and so it's like a lot of times I feel like these guys are using that the media wrong, and I think they're using their voices in a way that actually is created to like divide people up, and instead of just kind of talking from a place of like, hey, we're all kind of dealing with this right now. We want to, you know, there's a way to be more less like ego driven based off of like identity politics and things like that. Like you can be a lot more I don't know. There's just a way to see each other's side and have like a better conversation, but that just doesn't get good ratings on the news. So they just don't do that. But I don't know. I'm hoping that we're all kind of just settling down a little bit this year. And I think that we're all tired of just the constant barrage of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like, can we just go to a show?
Literally, just go to a show. And so with you touring around now, and, you know, I think you have different artists that are coming with you as well. When I was at your show at Antone's, Cameron Duddy was there, who you said is a good friend of yours, who's also part of Midland. So how is that whole process of, it's like now that you have been in Austin and you haven't been touring and traveling, like now you're getting to connect to some of those people that maybe you didn't get to see during that time?
Yeah, because usually they're on the road, we're all on the road, and we just pass each other like ships in the night, like just touring. It's cool. I mean, Austin, I love this city so much. I mean, I've been coming here for 15, 20 years now, but I just moved here like 4 years ago. So I've really, over the last 4 years, I've gotten like a much better understanding, I think, of like what's going on in the city, what makes it unique. And I mean, it's got, I mean, obviously everyone, you know, knows the sort of like city, you know, the city is like the capital, music capital of the world. I think Nashville tries to say that too, but it's just different. I think we have like a really unique situation where there is a business that's created off the back of music here, but it's a little different. Like we have most of the people that live in Texas have like other jobs. It's like Nashville's very much like all music. There's like healthcare industry there, but mostly it's all music industry. So yeah, they have a music thing, but it's all kind of based off business, and just like their deal is more like, you know, corporate business. Whereas like Austin, I think, is actually like people who work regular business jobs and regular jobs want to go watch music. And so we have a lot of people who can make a living playing music around here, just kind of serving our community of like, of people that live here. So it's created this really big industry here, but at the same time, it's sort of based in like a different thing than say the Nashville thing. So I love.
Do you have roots in Nashville too, or you?
Well, I've been working there a long time. Like I've got like booking agents from there, and managers, and I've always kind of had publishing stuff there, and like because a lot of that side of things is done there. Although I'll be honest, like Austin's got a lot of great people too, and I'm starting to kind of move my stuff here a little bit more. But like, I think that the music scene here is just, it's more like you see people jamming together. You see artists that are friends with each other that just kind of have like, especially in like the working class musicians, which is kind of really what I'm talking about. Like the guys who play 5 nights a week, they all play in different bands. They have, you know, one night's Zydeco, one night's like funk, the next night's country. And like, there's guys who just kind of morph around and there's gigs for these guys that keep them busy and pay their bills. And so that's a pretty unique thing here that I don't think like many other cities have a thriving culture enough to like just pay the working class musicians. So it's been cool because I've learned a lot about country music living here, like real country music. I've learned a lot about like New Orleans music, and I've met a lot of these guys like through being around Samstown Point, like guys like Jesse Leger, who I'd never would have heard about before, but he does like the New Orleans sound with the accordion, and just I've been around him so much now, just like watching him every week, and like stuff like that where you're like, oh, now I understand that genre and that sound, and not obviously not to the level that he does, but to a level like there's like, if you wanted to go out in Austin and learn about like Zydeco or, you know, funk or reggae or country, I mean, it's all there, and there's some of the best musicians to learn from and to watch. And so, yeah, it's been cool to kind of get to know people like that. Like I'd say that the Midland guys I got to know, and I've been really enjoying getting to know them and see how they do it, because they're doing it on a massive level. But they're still really, you know, coming from a really good place and doing, I think, a really good job of like helping people around them and like in their community, and kind of jumping up on stage with me and like going out and sort of, you know, they've caught some flack for certain things in the past, probably for being too beautiful or something like that. But they're really good dudes.
Well, you mentioned Austin, and that's one of the things that I think I've noticed too, just from having different artists here, and they all talk about that, is how the community here, it's not, you know, just kind of dog eat dog. It's like, no, you're all trying to help each other and lift each other up, and whether it's collabing with each other or whatever that looks like. So I think that is something that is definitely, from just the common thread that everyone keeps talking about, is how connected Austin is in that sense.
I think so. I kind of like, when I first got here, I was kind of surprised by like, there's a lot of people who have this like, don't give a fuck mentality in Austin. They're like going to show up late. They're like, we don't care. Like, they're not trying to like climb the ladder. Got it. You know, like there's some of that don't give a fuck, which I really appreciate, because I get really turned off by like just people trying to climb to the next, you know, rung and never knowing like, oh, is this person being nice to me because they just want to get, you know, this, or like, hey, can you introduce me to your friend or whatever? And it's just kind of like, I mean, there's always going to be a fair share of that stuff going on in any industry, but I feel like Austin, what I do love about it is that people are like, there's a lot of them that are just like, show up late. Like, it's not a big deal. I'm not going to try that hard. Like, you know, there's a little bit of that, like, which kind of gives it this sort of like laid back old Austin thing that I think a lot of people talk about, like the old Austin. It's a lot of that, like, kind of like not giving a fuck, you know, who you are, what record label exec you are. Like, we're just, you know, we're playing our gig and drinking on on the bar tab afterwards. And like, it's all good. Like, what else do we need?
Yeah. So how was that too? Like you said, not being on that record label anymore, and then producing your album, and then having this whole thing, and it came out during 2020 as well. So I'm sure typically when you release an album, you're used to immediately touring right after to promote it. So how did you navigate those waters?
Well, I have a full album, and I only released 4 tracks last year, but I had it pretty much ready. And then whenever the shutdown happened, I was just kind of like, man, some of these songs are so, it was almost like weird intuition or something when I wrote these songs, like, because they fit too perfectly into the narrative of like what was going on. So I felt like I needed to release them, just like, it seemed like just like timing wise, it was like Underground Forever was the first one that I did. And I've released it. I released that on like April 20th. And so we'd gotten shut down like a month before. And we made that video like out in the city of Austin, just kind of running around on this bicycle.
Yeah, I saw it. And it's like the streets are empty too.
Yeah, it was totally empty. And we didn't have to, we just got up early in the morning and we were just kind of like rolling around the city. I was just kind of like baffled by how empty it was. And so it was kind of like a little bit, what is it? Dystopian, I guess, because it looked like a film or something where it's just, Will Smith wakes up and like the world's gone. Like, but
like you said, it's very kind of coincidental then to like what the world was going through, and everyone was shut down, and you seeing Austin the way that no one's ever seen it like that. Yeah. And capturing that. The
good thing about, like, to take it back to your question, like about the labels and stuff, it's like being at this point, like I have a distribution set up through a guy down in Houston that has like essentially can put my music immediately on to like Spotify and Apple and all that stuff. Wow. For like a very, good rate, which I think is very fair, but he can do it like overnight. Like I could be like, hey, put this up tomorrow. And there's no like system of like going through the label committee of like, can we put this out tomorrow? Or can we, it's just basically, I can be like, I want to do this, done.
Wow. And
so the speed of like, especially having a recording studio and just being like, I'm going to record this tonight. I'm going to put it out like next week. You can act fast, like really fast without having that team. On the flip side, there's not as many people pushing things. Like there's not like the big marketing push. And I honestly I haven't done any marketing push. Like I've kind of almost took like that was almost like a part of this album was like, I'm not going to do a marketing push. I'm just going to start releasing tracks. I'm not going to pay for publicity. I'm not going to do it this time. Like I'm just going to just see if people
just organic, see what happens.
Just see, like, do people have to be told what is good? Do they have to read in some article that tells them what to think, or can you just put stuff out and like people catch on to it? It's kind of an experiment a little bit. And
how has that turned out? Yeah,
it's interesting because like some of the stuff that I thought would be really like reactive with people wasn't, and then some of the other stuff that I thought would be was. I mean, there's been like I've released 4 tracks, and one of them I thought was going to be like a really just reactive track was a song called Mr. Resistor, and it's just like it's almost got like an 80s sort of like new wave beat behind it, where it's like electronic but like kind of rock, and then the subject matter was all about like corporate surveillance and like how like there's basically like a glass ceiling and we're all kind of just like being watched and kind of manipulated through like data, things like that. And I was just kind of, especially thinking like after last year and just some of the stuff that was going on, like that people would just love it. And it literally, I swear, like I put it out, it was like crickets, it was just like, crickets. And I kind of like, it almost made me love it more.
Really?
In a weird way.
That's great.
Like, I don't know how that is, but like in a certain way, I was like, it's actually perfect that this one is like totally lost. But I've been playing it live, and some of the people that like follow me close, they know it, but yeah, like that one didn't really it didn't really get anything, but then like put out another one called Old Friend, which got placed on like a couple playlists, namely Indigo playlist on Spotify.
Huge playlist. Yeah.
It is a huge playlist. And I was always kind of like, just like naysayer about like all the streaming services and stuff, just because of the royalty payouts and like all this stuff. And I'm not really trying to walk that back, but I am trying to say that playlist really helped. And it like the track has gotten spun like 500,000 times.
Wow.
And with no promotion, with no, I mean, it was
a super catchy tune.
It was organic.
Well, yeah.
It was organic. And because I've almost gotten to this point, like where I see stuff online where like Morgan Wallen, drops like the racial slur and he gets like more popular, and like the label's like, we're going to suspend this album. But what does that even mean? It's like slap on the wrist, but it's like, it almost, I can't help but see that and go like, they planned that. Like they planned it. They paid for the PR campaign to like push it once it happened. Like it was all a part of the plan to do that. I'm kind of, can't help but be a little bit of a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah.
When it comes to certain things where I'm like, these guys planned this stuff. This was a PR campaign. It wasn't as like organic as it seems. Like a lot of, because people like when I talk to my parents, because they're like, they love music, but they never really had to like do the kind of stuff that I have or seen some of the stuff that I have. And so I'm always telling them like, oh, that guy, no, they like paid for that PR, like, or they got that placement because of this. And like a lot of people don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars go into just making a band a household name.
Yeah.
Like just the amount of money, amount of people that you have to line their pockets. And it made it to me like it kind of ruins the music industry a little bit because, and I know it's fair for we could all do that, but the dream or the idea that like, if you make something that's really great, it's just going to get out there and people are going to hear it. And like, there's times where I believe that. And then there's other times where I'm like, there's no way. Like the same company that owns Spotify owns Live Nation and owns, it's like, they're all publicly traded.
Right.
So like the same people, like these companies are owned by the same holding companies. They're owned by the same like hedge fund managers. Like it's because they're stock traded. So it's like it's almost like if you're not a part of this little thing, you're just not going to you're not going to be in the conversation.
Yeah. Because
it's like they're kind of like the tax man. They're like they're going to get their cut on the live show, on the recording, like all the stuff. And so it's sometimes it's just like, not that, look, I don't actually have a problem with like free market capitalism. I actually love it, but it's more like when sort of like the dream gets lost to like the market manipulation of some of this stuff, then I kind of get like, it's not that cool. Like I wish it was more organic and like, and it can be, and I think it still is, but a lot of times it's really reliant on like just tons of money being injected into it. So, I thought with this album, like, why not just like see what happens? Like I've been doing all this advertising work and I don't necessarily need my music career to be like huge. I've been making money doing production and doing all this other stuff. Like, why not just see what happens? Like just drop this stuff out there and just see if anybody, picks it up. And so like to see that playlist on Spotify, pick it up and to watch like how much it sort of pushed it out there. It's pretty interesting. Like it really was pretty interesting. And it is interesting, like watching it and just the amount of like data that's out there now for people like to see on the back end, like the companies like to look at and go like, well, 10,000 people streamed this, 4,000 saved it. Like to get that sort of 40% of people saved it, like that would be incredible.
Yeah.
It's they can really like look in and go like, this is working, this isn't. I mean, like it's bonkers these days.
Well, and I'm sure it's difficult too, because like you said, I'd say that the average person that's getting started, they're chasing after, like you said, those streams, they're chasing after the record label, the concert, all these different things. Whereas like, I feel your trajectory, you've been there, done that kind of thing. So it's like, now that you've experienced it, you know what that feels like. You can literally take a look at things for what they are. And like you said, have that luxury to be able to experiment and see like, hey, like, I know that exists, but like, let's see what this does in the converse of that.
Yeah. Cause it's yeah, you're right. I mean, it's all about, and that's why I said earlier, to start off, like the love of doing it has to be the thing that'll keep you. Cause when you start out, you're just trying to get somebody to care. Just get people to care. Cause that's the hardest thing. It's just, why should anybody care? There's a million things going on, like Netflix, Amazon Prime, like every artist, everything is open now. So why should someone care? So that's what you're starting out trying to get. And then once you figure out, well, like, oh, there's all these levels to like the journey. But I think if you're doing it for the love, it can kind of be the thing that just carries you through all that stuff. And you kind of find yourself, and like, especially just watching like an older artist, like somebody who's done it for a long, long time, and looking at like, why are they still doing it? You know, like they've already made a ton of money. They're already happy with their family. And like, why jump on the bus or jump on the plane and go play that gig? Like, well, it's because you get bored, and like, you know, like you get bored. You're like, well, I've got money. I've got like a cool car and house, and you know, I'm happy. Like, why do I need to jump in the van or jump in the thing and go play in, you know, drive 40 hours or whatever it is? Like, there's gotta be that thing that gets you to the place to play. And I think a lot of times the love of it really can be the thing that like, that will kind of sustain you through all that stuff, as far as like, cause why do it when you've got everything? It's like, well, it's cause you love it and you want to get back to that feeling. I think. Yeah. That's just me. I think that's true for a lot of people.
Totally. So what would you say, what's coming up for you now that I know, like you said, you're doing your like Texas residency. And so what's upcoming for you that you're looking forward to?
Well, I mean, I'm doing shows, I'm doing some touring stuff. I've got some gigs around Texas, and basically I'm going to just keep doing that through until things kind of open up nationally. I'll just keep doing Texas. Like I like it. I'm down to just, I actually really like weekend shows. Some people hate on it because they're like, you're just a weekend warrior, you know, but I'm like, I love.
Wait, what is a weekend warrior?
Well, it's kind of like, you know, when people are like motorcycle people, you get into like that. And I have a lot of motorcycle friends and some serious ones who are, you know, way more serious than say like your 9-to-5 like lawyer that jumps on the bike on, you know, puts on the like the cut on Saturday to be like the outlaw biker
Saturday morning. Yeah, they have the like motorcycle jacket and everything.
And dude, that's me at this point. Like that's me totally. You know, I'm not knocking that at all. Right. But like then there's the people who are like, you know, ride their motorcycles to their jobs and back, and it's there's like the layers of like, some touring musicians are like living the tour. They're out there like 250 days a year. I kind of like, I don't really want to do that anymore. Like I like to play Friday and Saturday and then like go home and live at my house for like Fridays, you know, Monday through Thursday.
So what do you do when you're not like producing music?
Yeah. I mean, I usually am recording. I have projects, like a lot of them. So I'm going to keep doing like the weekend runs around Texas. And if there's other tours that kind of come up that make sense, I'll do them. But in the interim, like Monday through Friday, I'm usually recording bands or doing some sort of project with like another artist. Like today I'm working with this girl from Dallas. Her name's Wylie. She's 17.
Oh, wow.
She's 17 and she's her dad managed me back in the day, and now she's like doing music.
Wow.
And so they're a music family. And so now I've kind of been helping her sort of like make an album. So it's interesting, like doing that. And then like sometimes I'll get a call. Like I just did a commercial for Bud Light.
Oh, wow.
I don't know when it'll come out or anything, but they called me and they were like, we're looking for this sort of sound. And I ended up calling some of the Grupo Phantasma guys, pulling those dudes in.
Wow.
And they really helped give it like the sort of polyrhythmic sound and some of the horns and stuff. So like all these kind of random jobs like will kind of come in, like Cameron and I have been working on tracks that for like maybe a side project. Like there's all these little projects. So it's like, it's kind of really splintered up into like different things. And then there's other stuff I'll do, like kind of getting involved with, there's things I can't even really talk about, but getting involved with like other businesses and other startups and things like that, trying to help kind of help kind of bring in just different knowledge to those businesses. So like that kind of stuff too. Like I try to stay pretty diverse in what I'm
it sounds
doing.
like it. You've got a lot going on.
I really do. But I kind of guess because I'm like super ADD, it like helps to kind of just have a bunch of different things that I can focus on.
That's like, I know someone else like that.
Is that you?
It's both of us. We're always doing a bunch of stuff. So just bona fide workaholics, but it's fun. Like you said, to keep, especially now during these times when you kind of had to shift and it's like you couldn't distract yourself with going out, or you said you're probably getting back to some of the things that made you start in the first place. Yeah.
It was like, if you start to hate it, like put it down for a little while and then, work on something else and then come back to it when you got the headspace for it. That's kind of what has happened. It's just like, I'll work on this and then I'll work on that. And just kind of inch all these things towards, just making things better, just trying to improve.
So what's coming up for you? I know you have another show coming up.
Yeah. I still have an album. Like I still have an album to put out. I'm about to start making a music video with a guy named Aaron Brown in Austin. He has a company called Onion Creek Productions.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him. Yeah,
he's awesome, man. Like he's blowing my mind, like with like his resources and his like ability to sort of magically pull people together.
Wow.
Because we've been talking to like ATX Events, which is like a studio here in town. And then this cool robotics company up north. So we're like pulling all these really cool Austin resources together to make this new video next month. So working on that. There's a guy named Jeremy Pinnell that I produced an album for that's going to be starting to come out in the next couple months.
Oh, wow.
I'm really excited for that to come out because I think it's a really special record. I'm trying to think of what else. There's other stuff. There's some really cool stuff, but I can't talk about it yet until it's more done.
You have to tell me after this.
Yeah. There's some cool stuff in Colorado. There's some cool stuff in Colorado that could turn into some really cool stuff, but it's got to be more like solidified before I start talking about it publicly. But there's some really cool things. Like I'm excited about this year, and I'm really hoping that people. I don't know. I hope that like the vaccinations really help get people, get the numbers down, or at least make it to where it's somehow, I don't even know what to say about all that. I just want to get back to work.
Yeah. Just get back to what you love. Well, how can people find you?
Well, it's easy these days, like on all the things. So
on all the things, but it's not your actual name. It's Wanathan.
Oh, on Instagram.
On Instagram.
Yeah, somebody took Jonathan Tyler, so I made it Wanathan Tyler. But yeah, I mean, if you just Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever you use for search engines, my name, stuff will come up, and it's pretty easy to find people these days.
Oh yeah.
You can find out a lot.
We were talking about that earlier. Yes, we're trying to stay private from a secret location here. But yeah, that's awesome. Well, super excited. Thank you so much for being here. We'll have links to all your music, everything. Still, like I said, I know we can continue talking, but we'll have to have
talk
you
about your stuff.
Oh no, I'm good.
Time.
We're good.
You're coming on my podcast.
We're good. This is great. I'm glad that we got to do this. We'll definitely have to do it again when that new album comes out and talk about that and maybe get a performance.
Sure.
Do something like that. So
just let me know.
Awesome.
I'm right up the street.
That's right. Thank you so much. We'll see y'all next week.
Take care, guys.
Bye.